The Russian government has engaged in espionage against Americans. They have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet. This has come from the highest levels of the Russian government, clearly from Putin himself, in an effort, as 17 of our intelligence agencies have confirmed, to influence our election. So I actually think the most important question of this evening, Chris, is finally, will Donald Trump admit and condemn that the Russians are doing this and make it clear that he will not have the help of Putin in this election, that he rejects Russian espionage against Americans, which he actually encouraged in the past. Those are the questions we need answered. We've never had anything like this happen in any of our elections before.
She wants open borders. Now we can talk about Putin. I don't know Putin. He said nice things about me. If we got along well, that would be good. If Russia and the United States got along well and went after ISIS, that would be good. He has no respect for her. He has no respect for our president. And I'll tell you what, we're in very serious trouble because we have a country with tremendous numbers of nuclear warheads, 1,800, by the way, where they expanded and we didn't. 1,800 nuclear warheads, and she's playing chicken. Look, Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit
No, you're
that the
puppet.
Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America.
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. As you see there, that's the buffoonery that occurred during the campaign. Now we, in hindsight, look at Michael Cohen this morning. You'll hear about it, I'm sure, but it was fascinating to see how the Republicans didn't ask one question about Donald Trump, but just attacked Michael Cohen because he's a admitted liar and all these others. They just tore him apart, and I couldn't understand. Well, I do understand it because we've got this Russian agent, Putin's bee, or I initially called him. But I'm no longer angry at all this. It's just weeding out the racism and the hypocrisy of the American people, the Republican Party, really. It's amazing to watch this kind of stuff. Welcome to the show, Sister Kenya, Professor V.K. Pearson. How are you today? Did you watch any of the...
President accounted for. I was in a facility that had a radio.
Okay.
So I did listen on WNPR, which is always a great blast from the past that gives us our future. So I was able to hear a great deal of it because I wanted to hear it right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And once the opening statements were done, because I knew that would be arduous, but I listened. And as you said, clearly, it's, first of all, we get it. Comey is not a decent person in the reality of business, lawyer, or whatever, but he has been indicted. So I don't think he had anything to gain except the reality of what's happening to him now is he's got to tell the truth. But what I was listening to was, in fact, every Republican congressional member was interested in a personal assault, which is sort of a waste of time because he's already indicted. Right. He's already going to jail. So there's nothing that they could say that was necessary. But they chose that path because they are so busy deflecting from the reality that Comey, I always say Cuomo. Cohen, thank you.
Cohen. Michael Cohen.
Yeah, that Michael Cohen, in fact, was working for Donald Trump for 10 years.
That's right.
And Donald chose him very strategically, which lets you know that his nefarious behavior is consistent. Because you have to go out of your way if you know that somebody's unscrupulous to seek them for an attorney.
Well, Graham can tell you that the biggest con game in town is real estate. I mean, you
That it
can't
is.
pass that around. But what I was so amazed at, all the Republicans didn't ask one question about Donald Trump. All their shots were at Cohen and what he did in the past. And any man that come out the way he came out and really more or less said that he has to tell the truth to really cleanse his soul. He said this has got to be hurtful to him because he hurt his family and then Donald Trump is threatening his father-in-law and everything else. So, I mean, it really hurt. This was the same man that said he would take a bullet for Trump.
That's right.
So he was gun-ho and in Trump's corner and watched his
100%.
back and lied and cheated for him. And then Trump turned on him. There was no loyal. I mean, the Godfather said no to his
his consigliere.
yeah, right.
That's right. That's
Exactly.
Right.
Two people you don't lie to are your parents and your lawyer. Don't
Your
lie
lawyers lie for you. You're not supposed to
Yeah.
lie
to
to
lawyers
them.
lie for you
Right.
because they never have to take the stand until now.
Yeah, something like that.
And listening to Michael Cohen, I didn't see all of it. I saw parts of it. And as you said,
Did you see his opening statement?
I didn't get the whole opening statement, but he did express remorse for his behavior.
Right.
And being the
Consistently.
son of a Holocaust survivor.
Right. Right.
And he did declare that Donald Trump is a racist,
Con man and
con
cheat.
man, a cheat. And he even said he regretted lying to the First Lady
Right.
Yeah,
at some
that was-
point.
Right.
People usually say, I'm sorry because they got caught.
Right.
We all do that. We
Yeah, of
get
course.
tagged, we say, all right, I'm sorry. But he talked about his father and having let down his father, his wife, his children.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that he knew better, but still did not do what he should have done. Just getting caught up in the notion of working with Trump. He said he quit his job. He asked Trump, are you offering me a job? He said, yeah. He said he never went back to his office at the law firm where he was working. He never went back. So he saw that as a great jump. And he was not a person that was without funds. He, his parents, they all had residence in the Trump Tower.
Right.
So they're not people of poor means necessarily, but there is a factor that hits at the human psyche. It's called greed and power.
Well, what most impressed me about it is that he said that Trump never expected to win.
Right.
That's why they continue with the Moscow deal. That's all he was looking for, and that's all he was looking for in the first place. This was an open campaign for his products.
His brand.
His
Mhm.
brand.
Yeah, he was-
right,
he
the
wanted
Trump
to
brand.
continue to
That's all he
promote
was doing. It
himself.
was a big ad for his brand.
Right.
So it was obvious that Trump was surprised he won. But once he was in there, look at the damage that he's done. Look what he's shown the country to be. We all knew it, but it just inflamed all the open wounds that were open anyway.
But I think, and I'm so glad you said open wounds, just on a spiritual note, this country has been wearing a mask for quite some time.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay?
go ahead. Go
So
ahead.
we have to be honest about it.
Right.
Trump supporters didn't just miraculously appear and push the lever. And I would even venture to say that Hillary was the wrong candidate at the wrong time, because I think if there were another candidate, we may have seen different results. But in reality, this country was very divided. Gardner had already happened. Trayvon was already in a box. The country exploded in Ferguson. So we were actually seeing pivotal points of the country divided, and then everybody would go back and put their mask on or their sheet on or whatever the case may be. And one of the things that I still to this day attest is that Trump delivered to that place that Obama and his beautiful family left the truth about the mask because everybody took them off with great comfort, with great anticipation. Now we can go back to putting you in chains, putting you in your place, getting you clear about who's running the world. And Make America White Again is the secret behind Make America Great. It isn't about America not being great. It's about America not being a country of multiculturalism.
Well, let's go back to our main topic of today.
Yes.
Enough about Trump. We gave him 10 minutes. But what I really wanted to do is run. This is about Malcolm.
Okay, we're still in the
This
month
is close
of
to my heart. Like I
prophet
say
himself.
before, I've said many times, I was 24 years old when Malcolm was murdered, and matter of fact, the Audubon Ballroom where he was murdered used to be our dance spot in the 50s, early 60s. That's where all the Latin dances were on Sundays, at the Audubon Ballroom. In 1958, 59, we used to go there. Oh, that was a place for it to go on Sunday. Have 5 bands. I mean, that place was jumping. So
You lived that history. That's
yeah,
awesome.
oh yeah, I was a Harlemite.
No searching, right? No metal detectors.
No,
No.
that was a good old day.
No pat
People
down.
were happy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
all we did is think about love and having fun. Right, Bev?
Meeting the right girl. Right?
Bev was right there with me. Yeah. All right, so we're just going to go to intro of Malcolm X and Brother Ministry. Minister, all right? And come right back to you in a minute. 4 minutes.
والأرض وضعها للأنام.
Tonight, a new documentary is raising questions about the assassination of Malcolm X.
The new documentary is called Brother Minister, the assassination of El Haj Malik Shabazz Malcolm X. And in it is contained passages from a speech by Louis Farrakhan. And here is one excerpt.
What have you got to say about it? Did you teach Malcolm? Did you make Malcolm? Did you clean up Malcolm? Did you put Malcolm out before the world? Was Malcolm your traitor or was he ours? And if we dealt with him like a nation deals with a traitor, what the hell business is it of yours?
That was in 1993.
Really? A few months ago.
Yeah. On Savior's Day, I believe.
I see.
Tonight, the Nation of Islam is reacting with anger to allegations that have put its leader under fire. Those sensational charges are in a story we told you about exclusively on News 4 New York last night. The widow of Malcolm X is accusing Louis Farrakhan of involvement in Malcolm's assassination.
I'm Kurt Loder with MTV News. The controversy surrounding Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan grew even more heated this weekend when Betty Shabazz, the widow of the slain Nation of Islam defector Malcolm X, implicated Farrakhan in her husband's assassination. It happened on an NBC Sunday morning show called News Forum when reporter Gabe Pressman showed Shabazz this video clip from an as yet unreleased documentary of Farrakhan addressing a closed-door meeting of his followers in 1993.
Was Malcolm your traitor or was he ours?
Do I think that Louis Farrakhan had? Of course. Yes. I mean, it was a matter of, it was a badge of honor. I mean, nobody kept it a secret. It was a badge of honor. Everybody talked about it.
There was no love lost between Malcolm X and Louis Farrakhan, the current leader of the Nation of Islam, but now the widow of Malcolm X has made a stunning allegation that Farrakhan was involved in some way in her husband's assassination.
I would like to know in that film strip that I just saw, I didn't see the documentary. But I'd like to know, what is it that they claim Malcolm did?
This is why I say it's the ballot or the bullet. It's liberty or it's death. It's freedom for everybody or freedom for nobody.
When Malcolm came into the ballroom that Sunday,
quietly moves behind the rostrum, takes a seat, assembles his notes.
Welcome back. That's an interesting piece. That came out in 1994, so that's 25 years old. So it's interesting. You have Marable's book here on Malcolm X. There are a lot of stories of what I thought was the greatest movement, black movement here in America.
And in fact, it's almost impossible to talk about Malcolm X. You know, I was 4 years old at the time, so was Obama. We're born in the same year. Without understanding his complete loyalty and dedication to something he believed in.
Right.
And I believe that when he entered into the Nation of Islam, he was completely and thoroughly convinced that it had rescued him from mind control, which he had engulfed him and involved himself in preliminarily before his childhood, because when he went to Boston at the age of 12 to live with Ella, he started seeking a different life. And it was prison, which was his school, School of Hard Knocks, the true School of Hard Knocks, that led him to take a look at himself in the mirror, and then being introduced by Reginald to the Nation, which began
Reginald was his brother.
Yes, Reginald, Reginald Little, began the process of allowing him to take a look in the mirror, because he did need, in prison, a transformation. He was still an addict. He was still addicted. He was still...
So what? Coke, right?
Coke. It was Coke. God forbid it would have been crack at the time. He never would have got off. Look at what's happening now. But the reality of Malcolm's existence in our lives was that of the loudest voice in the crowd of truth. And he spoke truth to life. And as hard as it was necessary for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to meet him to break the spell of white conditioning. And it was a brutal breaking. But in order to break a man who has been living under the consciousness of white supremacy and white power and white reality, you have to turn that energy into a demonic idea. And that is what really led to Elijah Muhammad's success, was that he was able to turn the entire white power movement into a destructive force in the body of the black man. Not outside the body, but inside the body, because the brainwashing had started from our parents. So he did his job, and he did it well. But what Elijah found in Malcolm, unlike other men, was a devoted leader, but more importantly, an incredible speaker. Malcolm's speaking engagements started in prison. Remember, he was a great debater in prison. He debated cats from Harvard. They would show up at the prison. It was in Boston. And he would debate them on any topic and slaughter them. He also, and this is something primary to our brothers who are incarcerated now, took prison to be an educational complex, because inside of prison, the great prophet, Messiah, martyr, a magnificent, eloquent speaker, studied. He took his college education, his master education for 6 years.
Well, you can't do that today, because they took education out of the prisons, right?
Right.
Right.
There are only a couple of programs in New York.
So you can't produce another Malcolm in prison.
Right. Well, there are ways. I mean, there are people that I happen to know that go into the prisons and they do prison education at no,
Really?
they're not getting paid for it. They bring to the prisoners education on self-awareness, historical references, museum artifacts, things that are being done. But these are programs that are not funded, right? So you have to subsidize yourself to go in, and thank God for them, because there's always, and remember, we're so largely outnumbered, and so improperly outnumbered, right? And disparity of our race in the prison system. So if you want to reach the masses of the brotherhood, and even now the womanhood, you have to go to the prisons.
Well, Malcolm had a family too, so.
He had a family structure. I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah.
Because and this is what's so important about the black family.
Right.
Malcolm was raised with a black family.
Right.
And not just a black family, a black progressive family.
His father was a Garveyite.
He was a true Garveyite. True Garveyites don't believe in working for anybody but themselves. And they produce what they eat. They also produce what they make. The mother was making all the clothes and the father was providing all the food. And then he was able to go out because he was a serious carpenter. He built his own homes twice, to go out and take his toolbox and find work amongst his people that needed to have buildings and cabinets and shelves and so forth. So he grew up watching an independence. And so in truth, Mr. and Mrs. Little should be credited for developing all 9 of their children to be the kind of children that would be able to stand on their own in the society we live in.
I have friends who were Garveyites back in the day. Well, they've since passed, but look at Marcus Garvey, look at Elijah Muhammad, look at Malcolm X. These men, as you stated, were trying to get people to think a different way.
Indeed.
And in that, they fell under the attack of the government, of the societal structure. The FBI co-opted Garvey's best friend when he was the Black Star.
Ship line.
The ship line. The FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, used a good friend to subvert Garvey and then ship him out of the country because he wasn't an American citizen. He was from Jamaica.
Right.
You look at Malcolm. Anybody trying to change the thinking of black people comes under attack.
Absolutely.
Anybody attempting to liberate their people comes under attack in this societal structure. Hoover went after Malcolm. Hoover went after Martin.
Hoover went after Medgar.
He went after
and
Medgar,
all of the 60s,
right.
the stars of the 60s.
And
But
he
as
broke
we
all of the federal laws with regard to
As we see in this
investigations.
piece here, the battle was internal. We're talking about brother against brother, all right?
It's
in the Malcolm case,
It's
right?
very important to make sure that we don't eliminate that, because
That's
a lot
what
of
we
the
have to
times
understand.
when I'm speaking to brothers who are currently in the nation and even who have left the nation since, their loyalty is still to the nation. The nation was the brotherhood, and in the brotherhood you do what you need to do for the brother. Well, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that ideology. That ideology says that you can kill my mother, but as long as we're in the same gang, you know, that's gangster mentality.
Right.
And that gangster mentality existed in the nation. And I want to say that something that was happening as I began, you know, it's important to read all the material that's out on Malcolm. I don't think that Marable was infallible. I think there was a lot of flaws to his 20-year research. I think that he wanted so much to humanize Malcolm because Malcolm was so deified. And just like people who write about King, they're men, they're human, they're living on the planet, they have wives, they've had lives. You know, Malcolm had you know, the work that I do on Malcolm, I teach a course called 3 Transformation to the Building of Our Nation. Not the nation, but he was rebuilding our nation, because even as a Christian in the South, you were beginning to hear about some guy named Malcolm. Yeah, you knew about the peace drives and the rallies and the sit-ins, but there was this dude named Malcolm who's walking up to white folks and saying, "You're a devil," and saying it out loud, "I'm black and I'm proud." And
Yeah.
you know, so he became, out of the 3 M's, I always say there were 3 great M's: Medgar, Malcolm, and King, Martin. But he was the one in the middle, and just like any middle child, he's going to have the strongest voice if you ever give him voice.
All right, well, answer the question that Betty Shabazz put to us all. What did they accuse Malcolm of? What was he a traitor of?
Now, this is important.
Elijah Muhammad.
Okay.
And the 6 secretaries that Elijah had.
Okay, and Malcolm
children
was never
with.
accused of stealing a dollar or
That's
a
right.
dime. In
He was
fact,
an honest one.
he was at the point of writing his autobiography, right? His living autobiography. And people don't know this, but I learned that in this book, in the Marable book, because I certainly didn't see it in other books. He had pre-donated his proceeds to the Nation of Islam's existence, so that when the autobiography sold 10, 12 million copies, they would get the benefit. Who does that? You know, he, again, and this is, he's guilty of neglecting his own family, but let's talk about 1993's reality check when Farrakhan, in the piece that you showed, is speaking about the loyalty of the Brotherhood as the new leader.
Or Malcolm was our traitor. And
yeah, Malcolm was whose traitor? Malcolm was put, Louis X, who was also Farrakhan, was put in the mosque in Boston as the leader by Malcolm.
Right.
Okay, so that again, so now we're talking about a loyalty, but a singular loyalty wasn't there. And a lot of these men who were trained by Malcolm, loved by Malcolm, financed by Malcolm, even assisted by Malcolm, betrayed his reality. You know, he was a real brother, and there was hazing, as I later found out, there was a lot of hazing going on in the nation, meaning that for infractions as simple as a cigarette, a brother be caught putting out a cigarette on the sidewalk, later that evening might get a visit from 3 or 4 thugs under Joseph X.
So what did you do to the member who had a baby with a woman in the movement,
right? So if you could,
out of marriage?
Let's talk about that. Here you were getting it, the infraction of a cigarette brought about a beating.
All right.
And you find out that your fearless leader has at least 4 women that you've met and seen with your own eyes. But I want to say something to that, because for a very, very long time, Malcolm knew about the women in 1961. They were already here, right? The babies, actually, the women that were pushing their babies up trying to get child support. He knew about it. And what he did, and it's important for people to understand this.
I understand that Elijah's son told him about the
Malcolm
children.
saw, but there he confirmed it. But Malcolm had seen examples. In other words, and it's something that even
the son was suspicious because
even Wallace said at one point. Wallace Muhammad said, from growing up, he said, he was younger, and he said, even as I was a man watching some of the behaviors, I didn't want to see it. I played like it's not really happening. In other words, you see, let's take a look. I mean, it's happening all over the place. Look at what's going on in the churches.
People,
the priests. People see the priests taking boys up to their room, but at the end of the day, you turn your head. You say, "But he's a father. He's a priest. He wouldn't do it." Or even when you know he's doing it, you say to yourself, "Well, I don't want to be the snitch."
But isn't that an African custom to bring young girls to the chief? I mean,
you're talking about some of the traditions, some of the iniquitous traditions.
That you're allowed to plant your seed throughout the.
I don't want to say that that's let's be clear.
Well, that's how they treated Elijah Muhammad.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Is that prominent men today? Period. We just had a piece with Trump conversation, right? Prominent men are always able to sow their seed. Or even, let's just say they're not trying to sow their seed, they're actually having illicit sex outside of marriage.
But in the movement, this was a no-no.
In the movement, it was see, here's what the Nation of Islam was a functional organization with a very serious, strict spiritual foundation. So your moral value was supposed to be your highest value. Your law under Islam, moral fiber, decency, honor, and respect were supposed to be the truths by which you drew your reality check as a man.
Okay.
And that was the highest level. And if you understand Malcolm, Malcolm had transformed to that.
Right,
Right?
exactly.
Out of his past, and even before the marriage to Betty, he had to transform his behavior on the lower stratosphere of his masculinity, right? Just assuming that, you know, I'm a man and if I want it, it's available. I mean, Malcolm was the big king in Harlem's mosque,
Of course
right?
he was.
Women were chasing him when he wasn't looking. So let's be
course.
clear. So,
Okay.
but, and in fact, he was so busy and so occupied, it was a brother that had to step up to him and say, hey, brother, you probably need to get married. And the reason that that was brought to his attention is that all these fillies are looking for a serious stud.
Right.
And all of these fillies cannot have the black stallion. So you're going to have to pick one of them because eventually it's going to become gossip. I think in Elijah Muhammad's case, he already had the honor and the crown of glory. And he was already glorified. And even though Clara was with him as his wife, I think he had traveled to the continent, coming back from the continent, seeing that kings, you know, that polygamy was a reality of many of the, you know, the African world, coming back here and not setting up polygamy, because it's not polygamy to sleep with women, give them babies. It's important in polygamy that they come into the fold, that they're a part of the family.
But
And
why,
that is
why
the
wouldn't
key
he
piece.
why wouldn't he take care of the children? Now Malcolm's first reality was he came to Chicago to turn in some money, and there was a young lady banging at the door at
That's
Elijah
when he-
Muhammad's
but
door.
not just one,
He
it was
found out
several.
that Elijah, having all these kids, wasn't taking care of them.
And he found that out because of Evelyn. Evelyn Williams was a factor.
That's where everything falls apart.
Yeah.
The concept of polygamy in Eastern culture is not the mindset of what is going on here. A man who has more than one wife takes care of
That's
his
it.
wives.
That's it.
He takes care of his children
That's it.
and looks after them. This skullduggery here, you know, that's like being a
gigolo.
A gigolo.
A real
you know, an R. Kelly or some street dude that's just running around screwing women and just taking the glory in it. You cannot bring a child into this world. I don't care who you are. You can't bring a child into this world and not take care of your child. You are not a man.
You are obligated.
Forget about being a spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual leader or anything. You are not a man if you're bringing a child into this world and you're not caring for it.
That's it.
You're not a father and you're not a mother when you fail to take care of your child.
Absolutely.
And even worse in these cases where the women were ostracized from the movement. And that's what really was.
But let's face
But
it.
look at what it did to Malcolm.
Yes.
His spiritual leader is suddenly what?
Castigated. And so
I
the
mean,
betrayal,
what
but
is he?
that's the
A
betrayal.
hypocrite, the
Well,
light,
that's
the light side of it.
That's exactly right. Let's take a look at what Betty was asking. She
Right,
said, what did he do?
Right.
Where did he steal? What
Exactly.
bank did he rob?
Exactly.
When did he pull down? And let's be comfortable with this, because we need to be clear that even to the last day of his dying, probably the week after, I think after the bombing, it was settled in his mind that he was really going to be killed. But I think prior to that, he was still
His house being firebombed.
right. His house being firebombed. I think he was still communicating and writing to Elijah to reinstate him,
Right.
because I think that it wasn't about reinstate me so that I can become the leader. Reinstate me so that I can prove that there is all this new iniquity, because Sharif, who was married to his daughter, was the money changers had taken over Chicago branch.
right. There
The
you
money
go.
changers, John Ali had come in power. These guys were the secretary, and they were looking at Malcolm with his purity, because at some point when he became God conscious and became clear that Allah is the source of energy,
Right.
and that there is a God that I answer to, not a man, not a nation, but I have to get my soul right with God, he elevated to another level. and took a look around him and said, but I still got to get my people out of this crisis. I got to join movements now. But in the nation, he had detracted the conversations that were happening among the buzzes. Because remember, all of these mosques, the leadership of all of the mosques outside of Detroit,
Right.
and outside of Chicago, where people were emplaced by Malcolm. Malcolm put every minister in every mosque, 47 mosques later.
So they knew that Malcolm would come around and clean everything up.
Yeah, Malcolm spent his entire month on the road. I think he was home, for a week out of a month? So he was on the road from mosque to mosque to mosque, rebuilding and restructuring.
He built the nation.
He built the nation. There's no question about that. And so if we wanted to talk about loyalty, the loyalty should have been, to the brother. Here's the thing that people don't know, and I don't know if it's talked about in other books, but they skipped a process. When Malcolm was put on suspension, Malcolm was put on suspension at a direct order. The process of putting someone on a suspension is that you're supposed to put them on a suspension and then they go before their mosque, regardless of who. If it's a minister then goes before the committee.
Because chicken coming home to roost?
Yeah,
with
but
63?
but even that was used as the ploy.
Okay.
They were planning to get rid of Malcolm for any reason at all. And I'm later finding out as I read the book that Malcolm may not even have known that there was an order because it was up to the captains. The captains got that information about not discussing anything at all about John F. Kennedy's assassination. Okay. But I wanted to just tie some things together that have been loosely discussed. Malcolm was in the nation purifying it. He was not asking for anybody to do anything beyond prepare to be at your best. But in the 1963, 1962, when John Ali got with Sharif and they got up to Chicago, they put so much pressure financially on the mosque to generate capital to send to Chicago.
Okay.
They were each member of the nation in a mosque was expected to sell 100 copies of Final Call. And to get that money out there, these guys were either you sold it or you bought it. Now you're talking about men working at the nation that didn't have jobs.
Right.
So they were on the street corner in the middle of 0 degrees in some of the climates that they lived in, selling that paper from 5 in the morning to 5 at night. They were getting arrested when they went downtown with the paper because they didn't have, vendors' licenses. So the pressures were mounting, and I think that Malcolm wanted to get back in toward the end to say, if you let me back in at the post that you gave me, I'm on top of John Ali and I'm on top of Sharif, and I need to go to Chicago and remove them immediately, and then you'll see things calm down. Because he could have kept the information of the illicit relationships with the women under the nation. As they say, as black folks say, keep it in the family. Just don't tell it. You know that Billy Bob shouldn't have done that with whatever he been with that woman or with his stepdaughter, but we're gonna keep it in the family. He could have done that because he had already started from the time he had gone to Phoenix and asked Elijah directly, and Elijah admitted it and explained to him from a biblical point of view, it's been ordained and this is the way I'm supposed. There was an ordination and I'm a man of God and I'm with these women, I'm giving to them more than I'm taking from them,
But they were outcasts. The women became outcasts.
And but now that's twofold. Outcast to him because he's not handling his financial responsibilities. One, because it's more than 4 children, right? And it's more than 5 women. So he's not handling his responsibilities, but at each individual mosque, everyone is at this moral high. Everyone is like, you can't smoke a cigarette, you can't be caught with a drink in your hand.
Exactly.
You can't go to a party for someone and they bring in champagne on New Year's Eve and you sip it without a beating. So if the moral fiber was raising, and our leader has broken down the code, and yet Malcolm was having meetings at different mosques telling ministers, I know you're hearing the gossip, as we all would do. I know you're getting this information. I know that you're listening to the whispers. So let me explain. In the Bible, he used the Bible as his analogy. There were many leaders who were taken down by And I think his big biblical reference was Samson and Delilah.
Well, how do you go for at Savior's Day, Farrakhan saying that Malcolm was our traitor, and if we treated him a certain way, it's our business.
Right, and he was talking to the media, trying to explain.
No, he was talking to. This was inside the mosque.
Right, the mosque. I mean, he was talking right.
Outsiders shouldn't have gotten seen this.
You're right, but I knew. He knew because it was being videoed.
He's talking about his own.
Listen,
but they didn't know it was being videoed.
That's actually true.
And he wanted to convey to the membership,
right?
This is our business, and let's keep it in house.
Right.
But like always, what you say in private becomes public.
Well, let's find out.
And Farrakhan who was jealous of Malcolm. Let's bring out the real deal.
I think so. I think that not only Farrakhan,
it was known.
I think that every single leader watched him on. Listen, America watched him on television.
Yeah.
America
He was
listened
the
to his
movement.
speeches. His speeches were written in the Amsterdam News, but there were other black press. The black press of Chicago was larger than the Amsterdam News of New York and was quoting him every day. Malcolm was the best at promoting himself, but not for selfish reasons.
Right.
His experience was, I learned that the white man doesn't like me and doesn't like how I look, doesn't like what I think of myself, and I have to get out here and tell you that, all of you beautiful black people in this country, so that you can take off the shackles of racism.
And he cleaned up a lot of brothers that needed cleaning up.
He understood.
This is a good boot camp that everybody that was ill, that
Strung
was on
out.
the wrong side, need to clean up their act and go right.
Personally, Malcolm
Let's play the
did so.
second half, and I'll let you see this other piece
okay.
here. And play number 3, and we'll come right back to you. This is the murder at the Audubon Ballroom.
Claim Malcolm did.
This is why I say it's the ballot or the bullet. It's liberty or it's death. It's freedom for everybody or freedom for nobody.
When Malcolm came into the ballroom that Sunday, I met him in the middle aisle, and I escorted him in the back to a little office area in the back of the ballroom, which sits off to the, well, if you're the speaker, it's off to the left, and if you're facing the stage, it's off to the right. And as the rally started to form up, myself and 3 others were given front rostrum spots. I had the spot on the right-hand side, the same place I escorted Malcolm into, and there was 3 others across the front of the stage.
He stands in the doorway of the dressing room, listening to Benjamin 2X warm up the crowd with inspirational metaphor and promises of eternal paradise. Something feels wrong out there, he tells those around him. Then the minister quietly moves behind the rostrum, takes a seat, assembles his notes, and prepares himself to take center stage, as he has done for the past 12 long years.
I didn't see him. I was made aware that he was sitting behind me, and he had walked out of the green room. You know, I guess that's what they call it, where performers would make up and wait to come out on stage. And evidently he had laid something on it, piece of paper, on a chair beside him, which was slightly to my right. And when I looked down, I saw his hand reach for whatever he had laid in the chair, paper. And I guess him being very sensitive realized that I was aware that he was there. And he said, make it plain. Make it plain was, I'm ready to come forward. That's all it meant. It didn't mean continue to talk. And I said, I now bring before you a man that would give his life for his people.
Just as Benjamin was ending his speech, the four of us was relieved. We went to the back of the ballroom. We were told to find seats in the audience and report back to the same location to relieve the other brothers that were up front. As that meeting was breaking up, Malcolm was being introduced. He came on the stage. Two individuals about 4 or 5 rows back started a commotion, get your hands out my pocket, nigga. I started walking towards them, and all of a sudden I see 3 individuals up front pumping shots at Malcolm. And they were moving from Malcolm's right toward the center aisle.
That's a reenactment, right?
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
It's a very good one.
It is.
Yeah, and they did it in black and white.
Gives you a good idea that what occurred. But Malcolm had more or less known this was going to happen, right?
Absolutely.
This is right after they had firebombed his house.
Right, on the 14th of February. On Valentine's Day.
Now, he almost hurt his kids, so he was
incensed.
Right?
He was incensed because now he understood one thing, that it was no longer just him. You know, it's one thing to go out to your car and some guys are coming down the street wanting to jump you, and you know, you got a couple of guys and you'll get into a tussle and a wrestle. You even look under your car. He had to start looking under his car every time he drove because he was waiting on a firebomb. But once it got to the point where he had to soak up, and I say this because how many human beings can continue to work knowing that the night before you were in your underwear, standing with a shotgun, but you were on your way to Detroit to deliver a lecture because you were already expected. I mean, he delivers the lecture that changes our thought forever as he reiterates the house Negro and the field hand, and he goes on a plane shortly after that occurrence. But the reality of that is, oh my God, I'm putting my babies at jeopardy.
That's it.
And I'm very clear, and it's, you get clearer as you understand. He had the ballroom was searched for 12 years.
Right.
You were padded, you were checked, and you were openly coming in. Why would you, on this auspicious afternoon, say, I don't want anybody checked in, everybody gets to walk in? It was kind of his death note to America, to say goodbye. And I want to say goodbye knowing that I'm going to get this hit. It's going to be a hit, but I'm going to take this hit and let me get out of this planet. My message will carry on. And as a matter of a fact, the divine source of all creation kept his message alive and is still alive today. There are many speeches we listen to, but honestly, we don't listen to any speeches like we listen to Malcolm's speeches across this world, actually.
You know, there's the parallels between he and Martin. There was a talk that Martin did called a call at midnight, or why Jesus called a man a fool. And in there he talks about, during the Montgomery sanitation workers, rather.
That's right.
They called.
Boycott.
And they said, the phone rang, it's like midnight. Nigga, you better get out of here. We're gonna kill you and your baby. They said, we're gonna kill you and your baby. And he said he had to go deep in his soul to find out what he was really about and committed to. He said, I couldn't go to Atlanta to talk to mommy and daddy. I had to decide whether I was gonna run or whether I was gonna stay. Same thing with Malcolm.
Absolutely.
We don't know what these two men had to go through, even Medgar Evers.
Yeah.
In knowing that your life has been threatened, and people are serious about the threats. It's not like some jive Negro standing on the street corner talking
Talk about
smack.
I'll kill you.
But these people hate you, and they will do you harm. You saw it, or he saw within the nation what was going on and what brothers were doing to brothers. He knew what white people would do. But it wasn't the white people who were acting like the devils at that point. You know, Martin caught it from a different perspective.
Right.
Just the fact that when you stand for truth,
That's it.
you come under attack.
That's it.
Because
By
truth
everybody.
exposes all lies, all fallacy.
Absolutely.
And truth is contentious. And we don't like truth.
And the whole point of this presentation today is to show our internal battle. I constantly remind everybody we have to watch how we treat each other.
Absolutely.
And here's our real struggle, and how we treat other blacks. I mean, we know the enemy, just like Americans have to unite, no matter where you're coming from, against this fool in the White House, who is dead wrong. All right, so that's how we started off today. But I wanted to end it up with showing Malcolm in his last months. Show that last roll-in, and we'll come right back at you. We only have a few minutes, but we'll come right back at you. Now, this is Malcolm at Oxford.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
We've
yeah,
seen
that's a
that, but I've got something on the tail end that you might find interesting, how Malcolm was coming to the civil rights movement also. I play that last piece.
In December 1964, Malcolm debated at the Oxford Union in England.
I read once, passingly, about a man named Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, to be or not to be. He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I go for that. If you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Malcolm was always involved somewhere in the struggle. And I remember in January of 1965, Juanita Poitier set up a meeting at her house for the regular civil rights leaders to meet with Malcolm X, to work out the differences between us so we could come from that meeting with a common platform. Once again, A. Philip Randolph was there, Whitney Young was there, Dorothy Height was there, Malcolm X was there, several others were there. Martin Luther King couldn't make it, but he sent a representative. And we spent that day discussing Malcolm's philosophy, the mistakes he made, what he wanted to do now and how he could get on board the people's struggle that was taking place.
January 1965. Now, he died the following month.
Yes. His
February
assassination
21st,
was planned.
1965.
That's right.
Now, you can see the whole movement Malcolm had changed his tune. He became universal. I don't care what color you are. I'm willing to gather all us up as people. And then he was taken from us.
The last transformation.
The last transformation
to being a human being and to having
a
a
spiritual
human race.
person, bringing out his true spirituality. He had seen his flaws. He had seen he had been gung-ho to the too extreme. They was disappointed. And then he became whole again. And then he was taken from us.
Because if you become whole, you will not only lead America, but Malcolm could lead a world.
Yeah, a black messiah.
Guess where he was? He was in an all-white institution.
Right.
Oxford.
In Oxford, talking about the struggle in America. Just as we looked at apartheid, and as the world began to notice apartheid, we made the we became the rally for the transformation that Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela were able to succeed in. We became that voice. You can't always fight it from the inside. Malcolm said, I have to take this outside.
That's right.
And I have to take it outside to anyone who will hear me, and hence the African American Organization for Unity was born. Because he now realized, I've got to unite our people. Because the nation really was, and still is to many degree, a separatist nation. It was separatist as much as religions can be separatist. As Baptists do not get along with Methodists or Presbyterians. He saw that, and I think he saw it always, because you know, when you read about Malcolm, Malcolm was in the mix trying to get outside of the nation's restriction on political involvement. He was politically involved from the very beginning. And a leader of such. And I think that it's important for us as we are finishing this History Month, and I always say that our Story Month, which is our story life, which is our story year, we should be reveling in the love energy that the three men of the 60s left us with. They gave us Medgar, who was a fearless warrior in Mississippi, a lawyer of extraordinary measure. They gave us Malcolm, who was our voice of truth, who really spoke our true feelings about the time that we were living in. And then he gave us a great minister of faith, Dr.
Spiritual
King.
leader, my spiritual saint. You know, it's been interesting this whole month. We've come up with some interesting revelations about our history. But we will continue here at the Gilchrist Experience to bring you how we see things. As you know, this is my little intake and output of what I see the world to be. Power to the people. God in me loves the God in you. Stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience. We have another minute for the Bronx.
I think of the 4 M's. Keeps coming back.
Yeah. Marcus Garvey.
Marcus.
Oh, it begins with Marcus. That's right. He's the beginning.
Martin, and Malcolm.
That's right.
The 4 M's. I don't know what the connection is.
It's a spiritual connection.
It is a spiritual
independence.
Because the M represents the mother. And
but
we
then
all
again,
come out of the motherland.
all you out there have to remember, all these humans had a flaw.
Right.
We can find flaws in everybody, but the idea is to strive for, you know, the God that lies within.
The best
the spiritual energy, which keeps us all going every day.
We're spirit beings going through a physical
Amen.
experience.
Amen.
And we are going to make mistakes.
That's it.
But to learn from them, as I think
Power
Malcolm
to the
did.
people. God bless. That was a good one.
Yay. I
That was a good one.
love the stuff you showed.